What's going on, guys? My name is Josh with your renovation expert. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 3 ways that you can patch drywall. So the tools that you guys will need to have is a stud finder, a level, a measuring tape, a drill, some screws. I use the 1.5" but you can go 1.25" depending on the size of drywall that you're using, whether it being 1/2" or 5/8 is your preference. Mesh tape, pencil, drywall saw, and a utility knife, and of course paper so you can write down your measurements and keep everything right there at base. So instead of taking longer on a project just to focus and try to make a video, I decided to make a little template of typical things that I get calls for, holes and whatever the case may be. So the first method we're going to focus on is going stud to stud. So most times people have like a ball, a punch, or something of the sort, a door handle, something goes into their wall and they have a small hole like this. So what I would recommend doing in this situation is, if you want to decide you want to go stud to stud, first things first, if your hole is big enough, most times you can stick your hand in and see if you can actually reach the stud and see where it's at. If you can't, that's fine. There's other ways that you can actually go ahead and take care of that. So what you can do, if you have a stud finder, you can go ahead and do that. Now, mind you, like I said, this is a template that I created, so I already know where my studs are. But just for video purposes, you can go ahead. You see your line, you mark where that is. You go to the next side. Same thing, you mark and you know where your studs are. So after locating your studs, basically what you want to do is grab your level and go ahead and go to the bottom. It doesn't have to be exact, but you can go somewhere near the bottom of the hole. Make sure that you have a straight line and mark across. Do the same thing on the bottom, same thing to the top. And then when we know where that stud is, you want to make sure you're about maybe 1/2 inch from the edge of that initial line, so that you can still get half of the stud to screw your new piece of drywall into. So same thing, straight line on that side. So again, being that this is a template of mine, I'm not gonna go ahead and cut this. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna show you what it would look like with it cut out already. Voila! I think that's how you say that, right? Okay. Anyway, so after having that piece cut out, I know right now you're seeing this whole stud is supposed to be 1/2 and 1/2, but you get the idea. But what you would want to do now to measure and put back in this piece, you get your measuring tape and you just measure straight to the edge flush of that. So I got 12 and 1/2. Once you got that, you're gonna mark that down. Do the same thing this way now. That's 9 7/8. 9 7/8. So I'm not gonna show how to actually cut the drywall. If you would like to see how I do that personally, my different ways of doing that, I'll go ahead and drop a link in the description to a different video to how you can learn to do that. I'm sorry about that. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link in the description to another video to teach you how, or show you how I basically would cut my drywall to put it in. But yeah, I'm just on to next. So in the instance that you actually don't have a stud finder and you have a drywall knife, what you can do too, you can actually just cut straight into the drywall going both directions until you hit a stud in it, so you can find a stud basically. So once you hit that stud, okay, this is my stud. Same thing, 1/2 inch from that side, you cut straight down. 1/2 inch from that side, you cut straight down. So on to step number 2. So this step I call the paperback method. Now don't go on Google and type in paperback method, because this probably is not going to come up. That's just a name that I personally gave it to, when I was learning or whatever the case. That's just a name that I gave it personally. But I consider the paperback method. I'm going to show you why. What I'll actually do on this one is I'll actually show you how to cut this one in. This will also be a part of the video that I spoke about earlier. That's going to be in the description. This will also be a part of that, but I'll give you a little sneak. This paperback method is a good method if you don't actually want to cut more into the drywall to find a stud. And also if you don't want to even put a furnace strip or another piece of wood in there to screw into, you just want to just put drywall in, that's all you really have. It's a good method for that. So how you would do this is, make sure I stay to the side. The same thing as that up there. You just make sure that you have a straight flush line. And you don't even necessarily have to do this step in regards to cutting out more drywall right here. But if you want to the piece that you're gonna put in, if you want it to fit in nicer or more uniform, then I mean you can go ahead and do this. But I'll show you in a second how else you can just go ahead and do this. Once you've marked your lines, you can go ahead and begin to cut straight across those, of course. I'm using my utility knife right now, but you can use your drywall saw. Just get that as squared out as possible. So after you've actually cut out that square, now you know that the piece that you want to fit in there has to fit, of course, within that. So now that you have this cut out, you can basically get your new piece of drywall, and we're going to go ahead and move into that step. I did mention that I would show you, I would tell you what you could do if you didn't want to actually cut this like I did, and you just wanted to leave like the existing hole that was already there. It's just a little bit more tricky. The objective that you want is basically to have a piece of drywall sitting inside of here, but it's not screwed to anything. What's actually going to keep this in place is the face of the skin on that drywall, and you're going to use mud behind it to actually stick it to this, to paste it to this basically. But this is the method we're going to go with today. You can go ahead and measure that. 2.5. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. Like I said, it just has to be a piece that's in there, 2.5 by 3.5. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that really quick. Now that you're ready for your new piece, now I'm gonna go ahead and actually show you how to cut your drywall to get that piece in there. So we did mention that it was what, 2.5 by 3.5. So what you want to do, we put this up here so you can see a little bit better. You can just go ahead and just make a straight line going up that way, and you can actually measure your 3.5 or your 2.5, I'm sorry, from that point. Go ahead and make another straight line. So you got 1 to 3.5, right? So you can go ahead and, well, wherever you want to put your straight line, say you put it there in the center. Go ahead and make sure that's straight. Again, doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but said you want that 3.5, so go ahead, get your 3.5 in. Hope my head's not blocking this. Alright, so now that you have that cut, what you're going to do is all this excess outside of this here, this is what you really want. All this excess you're going to get rid of. But there's a certain way that you want to cut it, because the skin on the front side is what you actually want. So how we would do this is, you take your utility knife, you cut straight from top to bottom on that line that you made. Go ahead and snap your drywall off. Now this can be the tricky part, and I mean I'm using a pretty big piece, so it's gonna be a little bit more difficult for me, but what you want to do is basically skin this, because what you're taking off is actually the face of the drywall. We're working from the back of the drywall right now. So if you see what I'm doing, I'm kind of skinning it from that back piece, right? And once you get to a certain amount, you can just rip it out, rid of that. And this is what you want. Still see your check in the middle there? Do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you do happen to do this at the wrong angle and you rip it too soon, I'm sorry about that, y'all. They decided they wanted to cut the grass today, of all times, but okay. And I realized that actually when I was cutting out these side pieces, it's kind of difficult to see. But yeah, so of course I made a pencil mark there, and you can see the check in the center. And this is the face of the drywall, so that's kind of what it's gonna look like. So what you want to do now is cut off the top and bottom piece of that check, and you want that check to stay. So when we did that again, you're gonna rip the skin off of that. Right? Still have your center piece there. Do the same thing on this piece. Okay, and there we have it. Now again, this is pretty OD. You don't need this much. I just used a really big piece. You don't need all of this excess. You just need enough to cover that hole completely. So let me just clean this up a bit. Alright, that's a little bit better, you know what I'm saying? So what you would do in this case, if all of this is cleaned up properly, this should just literally pop right in. Like so. So as an example, you see what I'm saying? The drywall sitting on the inside, you still have your skin that's just covering, you know what I'm saying? So from this point now, what we're going to do is we're going to mix some mud or compound, I'm sorry, and to make sure this is secure to your existing drywall. You're going to get some compound mud or compound mix, however you want to consider it. And before I even go further with that, if you would like to see more thoroughly on what kind of compound mix that I personally use and the different types you should use in different occasions, I'll leave a link in the description again so that you can go ahead and watch that as well. But in today's video, what we're going to use is just some regular bucket compound. And how we would do this basically is we would put some on the existing, just some around the perimeter, and you stick it on there. But of course, I'll show you when I grab my knife and stuff like that. So we got our compound, and go ahead and get this out of here. And you don't really need a lot. You just need enough to cause that thing to stick there. You don't want it too bulky or anything like that. And this is going to be the beginning of your mudding, your first coat. So once you actually apply that on there, you just go ahead and just feather that in. And then you begin your first coat. If you would like to see my methods on how I mud drywall and the steps you should go about it and what kind of mud you should use, compound you should use and stuff like that, I'll leave a link in the description. Check that out. All right, so method number 3, adding your furring strip or another 2x4, whatever other piece of wood you use to secure that piece of drywall. So basically, whatever piece of wood you're using to put inside here, you don't want it to be too short. So you want to make sure that this piece is at least 2 inches longer on both sides. So my opening is 6 inches. I'll make it 10 inches. I already had it cut, of course. So this is basically what you would want it to look like. It's not too short or anything like that. So you want it to be screwed up here and down here, and maybe even on the sides here as well. Let's go ahead, get that in there, get it half and half on the side piece. So another piece of drywall, your new piece of drywall can fit in there. Go ahead and screw a piece up inside of there. One to the top. One in the center. Right? And now it's time to actually put in your new piece of drywall, because now you have your stud on this side and you have your front strip on this side. And I think I forgot to mention, but this method basically was if you were to already have access to one stud and you didn't have anything to screw into on the other side. There are people who also put a piece in the center as well if they really want to, but unless it's like a really big piece, it's not really necessary, but it's preference. If you want to do that, by all means. Putting in this new piece, of course, again, this is just my template piece. I already know what my piece is already cut for it, but in this instance, now you do the same thing like you did on this piece down here. You just measure to see what you have, and you don't want to leave anything more than a 1/4 inch space on the side, because you are gonna mud it and tape it, but you don't want to leave it too big to where now it just doesn't look good. It's not a very professional looking thing, and it takes a longer time for the mud to dry when there's big gaps. So now that you're ready to put back in this piece now, so what you would do is basically the same thing like I showed you down here. You'd measure your opening 8.5, 8.5, 5 and 7/8. Now you don't need these pieces to be 100% accurate. One, because you're going to be using tape and mud to close up the gaps, but 2, if it's too close, it can be kind of tough to actually wiggle it into place, and you can actually damage your drywall, either the existing or the new piece you're putting in. And you don't want to have to either cut more drywall or recut your new piece. Again, this is a template piece. I already have my piece cut for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. I don't remember which way this was in. I think it was this way. Right? So now that you have your piece in, of course, you screw up at an angle to make sure you hit your firm strip, screw into your already existing stud, and then from this point in is when you want to tape this off and mud. And again, if you'd like to see me do this more thoroughly in a different setting, I'll leave a link in the description so that you can go ahead and follow that video as to all the steps you would need, the material that you needed, so on and so forth. But I will tell you, mesh tape is what I use. There's paper tape as well, or there's other methods as well to where you can actually use mesh tape or paper tape or whatever kind of tape they consider that, but I personally don't like the paper tape. I prefer the mesh. So in this case, what you'd want to do, you'd want your mesh tape to be half and half of your cut. So now that that is completely taped off, now your next method, of course, is to mud it. All right, so that's basically it. We just covered the 3 ways that you can patch drywall. I hope you guys were able to actually learn something from this. This was definitely an experience for myself as well. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Share this to anybody that may need this in the future for your personal DIYs. It would help me a lot. I would love to help you guys as well in any way that I can. But we're gonna take off from here. My name is Josh with your renovation expert, and all peace and love, man. You guys take care.